Jerry gets those
Oh,
hands
one of them has mistakes on it.
Nice and warm. This one should be right there.
Yeah,
Thanks,
yeah,
Jerry.
the new one that, and what's the one?
There we go.
It looks about the same.
Sir.
Thank you. All right.
So,
So,
One on the
Ready?
table is-
ready guys?
I'll call the meeting of the Personnel Committee to order, Rochester School Board at 6:04 PM. First order of business is pledge of allegiance. Please stand. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 2 is approval of the May 5th, 2022 Personnel Committee minutes. So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions, additions, subtractions, deletions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 3 is resignations. Tanya West, teacher. Amy Gowell, paraeducator. Emily Norcross, teacher. Jeff Moses, teacher. Gretchen Solomon, teacher. Steve Talon, custodian. John Bruce, custodian. Kelly Verbicki, paraeducator. Jennifer Reardell, teacher. Sandy McDonald, assistant superintendent. Okay, motion.
I'll make a motion. No, second.
Motion been moved and seconded to accept the resignations. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Item 4, nominations. Hannah Claxton, teacher. Kimberly Corey, teacher. Inja Diamond, teacher. Mackenzie Harrington Beckott, federal grants manager. Mary Malene Mail, teacher. Brooke Moody, interventionist. Haley Ness, interventionist. Polly Oliveris, assistant principal. Excuse me, Paula Oliveris, assistant principal. Michelle Shaw, teacher. Brianne St. Pierre, interventionist. Amanda York, teacher. Mary Damazzi, paraeducator. April Tucker, teacher. Kristen Cyphers, teacher.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions on nominations? Cindy?
I thought we approved last month the federal grants
Yeah, it was
manager.
2 months ago, and unfortunately, family circumstances caused her to back out.
That Ms. Cooch person.
No, the first person.
Well, the person we approved last month was Cooch.
Right, it was 2 months ago, and she
Yeah.
had to withdraw.
She withdrew.
Oh, she withdrew.
She withdrew.
Okay. Okay. So there is only one administrator. Yeah, okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes, thank you. Item 5, retirements. Anna Tall, paraeducator. Elaine Craig, secretary.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Extended school year program nominations. That sheet left blank. All right, so hopefully these are the right ones. Alexa Andrus, speak. Oh,
Can you just?
yeah, you want to just go
Can we just
through?
review the list
You want to review the list? You absolutely. Yep,
and then take it as a whole,
yep.
perhaps,
Yep.
if that's okay?
As long as we're on the same page with the same list. The one that Jerry just handed around prior to the meeting.
Mr. Chairman, could you just explain to me what an extended year program nomination is?
So those are,
So we do special education summer school. This is extended school year. It's part of students' plans.
That makes sense.
So these people all working through the summer, you saying, or
They're
something?
working for the extended school year, yes.
Okay, okay. But they're all regularly in our system and all that stuff? Okay. I'm gonna ask the same question
Same answer.
Mr. Rapucci, about number 7 and number 8?
Same answer.
Same answer? Okay, thank you.
Can I make a motion that we accept the extended school year program nominations as listed?
Motion to accept the extended school year program nominations been made and seconded. Any other questions? No?
All set, thank you.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion passes. Spalding High School summer school nominations.
So moved.
Second.
Made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Elementary school the elementary summer school nominations, excuse me, list as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further questions or discussion?
Mr. Hughes, how are we seeing summer school numbers, post-COVID? Is it kind of leveling out? Are we seeing a decrease or?
It's about the same amount of families that take advantage of the year.
Okay. Thank you.
So elementary, just to follow up to that, elementary is by recommendation of staff or teachers or voluntary, correct? There is no requirement for at the grade school level.
Correct.
All right, so we have a motion to accept, seconded. All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 9 is the Rochester Middle School summer school nominations as listed.
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 10, new teacher orientation coordinators. Christine Evans, teacher. Cheryl Hanson, teacher. Adam Black, teacher. Lauren Jurr, teacher. Caitlin Matador, teacher. Megan Walkma, teacher. And Melissa Marcox, teacher.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? Motion's been made. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Special education personnel proposal. Ms. Ryan?
One moment, I have a handout and I'm going to project here in a second.
Okay.
So on this page, please start with proposal number 2. That's what Ms. Reinhardt is going to speak about right now. Proposal number 1 is a late submission from the high school that I'll bring up in other. All right. In this proposal that Ms. Reinhardt is going to share, it's important to note when we hired Ms. Reinhardt, it's because we lost someone. The board had asked me to find out why we lost someone, to do an audit of our special education numbers, review staffing in other districts, and also look at what we always present to City Council, which is the number of positions that we've lost in the last number of years. And if you remember, one of the items in 5-year strategic was that of all departments, through the 28.5 positions that were cut, special education had the most amount of cuts in that amount of time. They had 9 of the 28, 9.5 of the 28 that were there. So at the beginning of the year, I asked Ms. Reinhardt to do a lot of this homework that she's going to present to us. And the important piece of information to realize is that what you're going to see here is a position that's proposed to you on a 2-year trial basis, all funded through a grant. All right? But we hope to have some measurable outcomes at the end to see if it would be something that, in a year and a half, we would be entertaining funding through our budget if it yielded the results we wanted. Right? So I'll hand it off for a brief presentation, and then we'll have question and answers. All right?
Thank you. Thank you for having me here tonight. So as Mr. Pucci said, part of me coming here was, part of when I started was to look at the systems we have in place. And through my conversations and my meetings with the board and the other committees that I sit in, we've heard a lot of conversations about things like out-of-district placements. Staff have a lot of input around consistency of services across multiple schools, especially in the elementary level. Time, professional development, all these pieces. When I started, we also had some corrective action plans that had to be addressed through the Department of Education. And so the purpose of this position is to address those pieces. And so if you look at the presentation, to give everyone some context, we're looking for an Assistant Director of Special Education and Student Services for the elementary level. And this is really important. We think about, we have about 8 elementary schools, and each one of them has a different person who runs this, oversees the special education there. And then I oversee it in addition to that. So there's a lot of space there. There's a lot of things that happen. This is our first introduction to special education. This is where we see a lot of our out-of-district placements that are generated from, and this is also where we see a lot of our compliance issues. So consider, if you can see, just to give you some context, in the buildings, just in our buildings in special education, when I did these numbers the other day, and they can vary a little bit depending on if we've identified new children or discharged 1 or 2, we have approximately 365 special education children in our elementary school buildings. So that means we're going to have a minimum of 525 IEP team meetings a year that we have to LEA, follow the special ed regulations, ensure compliance, provide fee. And right now we have at least 8 or 10 different people running those meetings, which becomes very challenging. I also want you to think about, and I noted, this doesn't even count referrals. Because we have so many different schools, we couldn't even track the number of elementary school referrals. Our middle school alone had 31 referrals this year. Each referral, if we evaluate, is an additional 3 meetings. So right there, that's nearly an additional 100 meetings. It's 93 more meetings. So consider the volume of work as we go through this. So with that in mind, in that context, and the volume of work we're going through, we're going to address 2 real key issues with this. One is going to be our compliance. We're going to address those corrective actions that we need to have in place around our special ed timelines, around making sure we're providing our FAPE that we need to do. And remember, anytime we talk compliance, we're talking about workload for staff, we're talking about potential legal costs, potential compensatory ed costs. So compliance has a number with it. It has education for children and a number associated with the district every time we go out of compliance. So this is a really important part here. So this position is going to help oversee that through the active running of those meetings, through the training of the staff, through being very present in those buildings to provide that to support, to ensure that we are providing the free and appropriate public education and meeting all our timelines that we're required to meet under special education. And these also are monitored by the Department of Education for us. So that's our first piece. Our second piece is really looking at our enhanced programming and fiscal responsibility. So we know when we think about, okay, many of our out-of-district placements start in the elementary school. So that makes us go, okay, what's our internal capacity? What's our ability to program for children if their needs are outside what we typically see in an elementary school? And that's where having a very experienced LEA is very helpful, because we can create those programs, we can assign resources that building level LEAs don't necessarily have the authority to assign, and we can make sure we're enhancing and providing a high quality FAPE. We'd like to see the number of kids that go out of district in the elementary schools really reduced as we move through with this particular position. The other thing on the slide that I just wanted to give everyone just a little kind of concept about what an LEA is are those 3 bullets. So we're looking for a highly experienced person who's qualified to provide or supervise the provision of specially designed instruction. That's special education. And so when you think about that, that requires a good deal of knowledge and experience to know, oh, I see the student sitting in front of me, I understand FAPE, the free and appropriate education to be this, I know how to write that in the IEP, I'm ensuring we're using our systems that are created to make sure we have continuity across our buildings. And it's pretty hard to do if I'm a building principal and I'm also doing all these other things. I need someone whose mind is right there able to do that. And we have that to an extent at the middle and high school levels, right? They're also overwhelmed with meetings, but we do have someone devoted with that kind of training to this. They also need to be knowledgeable in general curriculum as well as the availability of resources. So the assistant director has a different level of resource availability than our building level principals do. And so all this rolls into a higher quality FAPE, right, enhanced programming, increased compliance, and in the end, we should see more of our students remaining in our schools, which decreases our costs out, and it decreases our costs through compliance issues and compensatory education and all those things.
The other thing, if you think about it, as she mentioned, 8 schools, 8 LEAs, we have 1 middle school. So the level of goals and plans, the consistency with goals and plans as students move through the elementary school and then get pushed to the middle school will be so much more aligned and easier to follow than having to have additional meetings to figure out what really happened at one school versus another school. So this is really going to create a system that allows for a greater amount of oversight, but more consistency in the end to better serve students.
That reminds me of a conversation we had at the retreat the other night. Was one of the issues that they talked about was getting information from the elementary schools consistently to know how to address the needs of the student when they get into the middle school and the high school. And this sounds like, it's gonna do exactly that.
May I? Absolutely. And part of this is one of the things that since I've been here is we've set up these systems of how we're going to write our services. So that way what I write in Chamberlain is going to look like what I write in School Street, which is going to look like perhaps different how we implement it, but at the middle school, right? And then the high school. Because our faith is our faith, and so we should make it clear. So when parents move schools, they know exactly what's happening in each school. And then when the next school looks down, oh, I know exactly what this means, and I'm able to provide for it. Which also allows us to budget better, because when I budget, I look at all those services, and I start going, what do I see, what are the patterns, what kind of instruction do we need, but it has to all be similar for us to do that.
I have a couple questions. I'll start with the first one. I'm in favor of this. I absolutely think it's something we've needed for a long time. I'm glad we found a system that can be implemented. My concern is Rochester's a tax cap compliance city. Is there any idea what a projected cost would be for this role?
Well, and again, I think we have grant dollars now.
Right.
So it would be, an administrator's salary. But hopefully, as we track this position, the cost savings would offset the position in the future. And again, that's something that we're gonna have to do and track over the next year and a half. So when we get to January, 2 years from now, or a year and a half from now, we're saying, it worked. This is what cost savings were, or it didn't, and we look to let the grant run its course and then move on.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, and I think the intention there is, we as a board know what we've lost, and we understand the value of this role can be an exceptional amount of services we provide inside the district. And quantifying that, mapping it is very challenging. So it's not something I want to see go away. So what I'd like to make sure is, even if the number's short of the total cost, we can manage to that number. If the board at that time decides it's of value, we should kind of monitor what it is. So as that progression, if it doesn't cover the cost, we can cover half of it, whatever it is, just so we can, I think the board has to be cognizant, because if we're seeing growth from that, I don't think 2 years is long enough to let it run the cycle, so that was the
And that's my question. And the only other question I may have is this a position that we currently have qualified people in-house that could be promoted up to or fill that role, or are we going to have to seek a posting position and hoping the labor market?
So being new here, there could be staff members that I'm not aware of,
Okay.
right? This position, when you think about someone who would be an assistant working with me, we're looking for someone with experience. That would be the most ideal. Because really, to manage a system that we're talking about requires a lot of knowledge and experience and having done it. And sometimes it's easier to manage systems if you're coming from outside a system.
Well,
But
it's a fresh look.
it's a fresh look,
First off,
exactly.
right. So that also comes with a cost, obviously, because you're paying for the experience and the knowledge of that depth. So it kind of goes back to Mr. Lynch's question. It works for a couple of years with the funding source through the grant. But is this, so this is tonight's proposal is step one as far as personnel.
Yeah, we were hoping to get a motion so that we could then go post, right? And then we could see what the candidate pools are, and then we would obviously bring back nominees to nominate.
Okay, that's just a little-
That was the second part of the question. If we make the motion to approve it, when would you want to be, obviously wanting the building as soon as possible? What do you think, is there a pool of people? We've heard a lot about a labor shortage. I'm just concerned that we're going to put a fishing pole in the water and not get anybody to play.
Well, and again, we don't know until we try. I think that's the issue, and I think, getting out as soon as we can. So, if this goes and then the board approves it on the 9th, we could be posting on the 10th. I mean, would it be great to have someone in July? Yeah, but might not happen until August, because you want to find the right person.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to move forward with the proposed position under the ESSER grant funded for 2 years.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded, discussion, Shane?
So I was a little confused, when the grant money runs out, what would happen with this position? Would we end up having to, if we want to keep this position, will we have to cut in different areas? How would that work?
Yeah, so as I said earlier, so we're going to monitor the funds that hopefully this saves, right? So then it would be, if we save funds and our budget was X, right, you could justify the position because of the cost savings. The way that it will be advertised is that it is a grant-funded position. So there's no expectation that the district has to fund it beyond the life of the grant. But again, if it was, let's just say, saving $500,000 or $600,000 a year for a year and a half, I would be coming to you in that budget cycle to say, I think we need to keep this position, and we would fund it through the savings that we've made.
And the other question I had, how much does it cost for us to put a student out of district?
It all depends on the level of service, and I guess you could give a range, but it's really an à la carte system. I know that sounds weird when you talk about a student, but student X and student Y are very different because of the service that they have. So they range anywhere from 20 to 100 more.
So, yeah, so I think we talked about this in the other committee, right? And then I had sent you all the link to look at it online. So it ranges, and so in all fairness, Mr. Pucci and I could go into the same school, right? But I have a different set of services versus what his has. So mine could be more expensive. I might require a different transportation. And so it really all depends. And a kind of example I use, I think I've shared that my own daughter is special education, right? And if we were to pay for her services like a la carte, her program before the pandemic probably would have cost the school district about $70,000 because of her unique needs and what she has in it. And so, and she's educated in a public school, so it doesn't nearly cost them that much. It probably costs them, maybe for the contracted services, 10 or 15. So that gives you just right there, if I had to pay for a program a la carte versus having the resources of my staff to kind of spread out the cost of that. The other thing to remember is that when an IEP team decides that a child is going to go out of district, typically we're looking at an out-of-district placement for at least 1 3-year cycle, right? Because it's very disruptive to children to move them into schools, out of schools. We don't do that to children. So if an IEP team goes, we have exhausted all our resources locally in our public schools, there's nothing else I can put in place to provide FAPE, and we have to look out, we're going, okay, 3 years. But then we have to decide as that IEP team, every year we look at the placement and go, is this still the appropriate place? Is there something less restrictive? Because it's very restrictive to be away from your peers, but less restrictive might not be back in the school. So we've placed students out with 1 3-year cycle, they've gone back in, and that's fantastic, right? They've gotten what they needed, we've given the intensive supports, the IEP team can now provide for them in the school. There have been other students where as part of the IEP team, we've placed them out and they have remained out for 7 years, 8 years, or until they're 21 and age out of special education. So it's really important that the teams really weigh that decision very heavily. I think sometimes we think it's just, a quick in and out, but that's very disruptive to a child's life. And to be removed from your local school can oftentimes for children be very stressful as well.
And this position would be for the elementary schools, so that it would bounce around between all 8 schools.
Ms. Gaines?
Just so I'm perfectly clear here, because I'm getting lost. This grant money is available, there's no competitiveness to that or anything, it's available. And they're 2-year programs.
This grant can be established something for 2 years, yes.
Okay, and this person will be in addition to our staff?
So it would be in addition to her.
Right.
Right, but I mean, to the staff, it's not, if be an outside person, it's not gonna be somebody that's
No,
now
some-
teaching fifth grade or something.
No, this is an addition, yeah.
Okay, all right, I think I'm clear, thank you.
All right, got a motion made and seconded. Any further discussion, questions? All right, so you want to restate your motion, just for
I
clarity?
will like to make a motion to approve the grant-funded position of Assistant Director of Special Ed and Special Services for the elementary level.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 12, non-union salaries. We had a packet there.
That's in,
Yep.
what's this other proposal on the top?
That's in for other.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So there's a list.
Yep, so the list is a list that I prepare for you each June for the non-union salaried folks. So you can see there's a 0 to 3% range, and I ask that you approve as proposed.
Mr. Pusey, just so it's on record, this does not exceed our tax budget,
No.
correct? Much.
Yeah, could you just explain the initials to me again? I'm still trying to learn
Oh,
all
that's
of
fine. Yeah.
CIC and DI?
So, Mr. Pusey, CIC is
The computer center?
Yep, so that's our tech department, our computer people is CIC.
Is CIC?
Yep.
Is computer?
And then
Okay.
DI is,
District itinerary.
yeah.
Is what?
District itinerant, so they move around the district. So you see some LNAs, some nurses, so
The speech assistant, like they're people that transfer around the district, dictated by where they're needed for services.
Okay.
FAC is facilities, that's Dave Toddy's group. SAU is central office.
So I guess my other question is, SAU, some employees are SAU employees and some are Rochester District employees? I mean, we got a whole bunch of people here listed as SAUs before.
right,
Like
there-
Mr. Toddy is, I know we talked about that a month ago, but I didn't understand it then and I still don't.
right.
So,
So he works here at the central office department. That's the
Okay.
department he's in, the SAU.
yeah,
Okay, and he's a non-union salaried employee. That's why he's on this list.
are there other people, other school districts in our SAU?
I don't understand what you mean, Sam.
No.
No, Rochester
No,
School
just
District
us.
is its own SAU 54,
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
so that's,
and the
okay.
SAU covers the administrative offices and
Okay.
non-school specific. So it's not necessarily, William Allen is a school within SAU 54.
Read that document.
It's the umbrella.
On the back page of your minutes.
It's on the very last-
The very last page.
It should be in your packet, Shane, very last page of the digital packet.
Okay, that's good. I probably won't ask this one 3 more times between now and December.
SAU is the umbrella.
Yeah.
We're all in the SAU 54, not down to the school level.
Thank you. You find it?
Motion?
Do we make a motion there?
We did, we have a motion in a
Yeah,
second.
Motion and second
Yep.
to approve the raises, or I guess move the.
Oh, no, we didn't make a motion, did we?
I don't think so.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought we did.
Yeah, you're making a motion.
And I'll do, then you have one second.
Matt wanted a second to move, you just have to go to finance first, I
Yep.
guess, right?
I'm assuming.
What's the motion?
Motion to approve the rate increases or salary increases
Okay,
as listed.
That's listed, yep.
thank you.
Any discussion? All set? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you. Back up to the 5-year plan. We're
Waiting on this.
waiting on the input from the, yeah,
Retreat.
retreat, thank you. All right. Anyone from the public comment? No, seeing none. Other.
We do have one other. So if you could look at the handout that I prepared for you tonight, and look at proposal number 1. So, again, you've submitted a budget to the city council, and so I just want to start by saying that this does not change the budget that you've submitted. What we do at the high school in particular is we work with students and families to schedule students into courses from this year to next year. One of the things that we noticed was that there was a substantial reduction in foreign language. We had a position that retired recently from the World Language Department. So what the Spalding High School did when they ran their numbers is class sizes are still very manageable in the World Language Department, but they felt like that position, right, that full-time equivalent, would be better served, right, by changing the position and putting it in a different department. So the dollars and cents that are in the budget do not change. You might actually have cost savings because you lost a retiree that was very high and we'll pick up a newer teacher. But what we're proposing is moving that position from world language and create a full-time licensed drug and alcohol counselor. For those of you that have been on the board for a while, when we had the SAMHSA grant, again, that was a grant position. And if you recall, we've lost our licensed drug and alcohol counselors because it was a grant-funded position that we couldn't put in our budget. And they found a position in another town that was in the operating budget, and it was going to be funded year after year. So for security's sake, right, people that have families, they went to those types of positions and left us because we always had ours in a grant. And so what this would do is this would move this position into the operating budget. Obviously, it's still something that could be cut if we had to, but it does allow people to see that the funding is coming straight from our operating budget, which makes it a more secure position, something that they can kind of hang their hat on and hopefully stick around for some time. And what you can see here is there's a need. Currently, we have a grant-funded person that is there very infrequently because they're shared between two schools, right? We really want to be more proactive, right? We want to get groups in place. We want to make sure there's a mentor program as well. So I hope that you support this type of position because I think it would do more good for more students and families in our community.
I'd like to make a motion to move the world languages position to a full-time licensed drug and alcohol counselor as requested by the superintendent of the high school.
I'll second.
Motion's made and seconded. Questions?
Yeah, first of all, what was the world languages issue? What are they, or who are they, or?
So foreign language.
Yeah, foreign language.
Spanish, French, Latin.
Yeah. So any
So
of
we
the,
don't have any foreign languages anymore?
No, we still have foreign languages, we just don't need that FTE. So there's a number of teachers in the department, right? One of them retired. Enrollment has declined a little bit, so we're gonna be able to sustain the level of services, right, and offerings with one fewer teacher based on enrollment next year.
We'll see. Okay.
Okay?
I have to think we ought to emphasize more on that, but I have one other question about it. Oh, where will this person be located? What
At
is?
the high school.
they'll be in the high school.
Okay. Are they gonna roam the corridors, or are they gonna be,
No,
a
so,
student's gonna be referred to them? Or
Yes.
how is this,
Yes.
how's it gonna operate?
so it'll be like counseling, people can go there if they need it, but they'll also be referred there through disciplinary actions from time to time.
Okay, thank you.
For those who are new to the board, Donna and Sandy and Shane, we had one for a couple of years and it was very successful. It was a great program. And when that grant went away, we couldn't substantiate it in the budget, we just couldn't keep it. So we know it had success, we're pretty happy with the results of having that. When we lost it, we didn't want it, so we're glad that the high school found a way to move things around and hold this, so.
How did you measure your results?
It was really the number, so we see like discipline cases and that fluctuation in discipline cases, and then the secondary support. When we had our debate, we talked a lot about building systems to bring support for kids, specifically post-COVID. This is one of those devices that helps with that specific algorithm.
I hope so. Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Committee.
So currently we have an LDAC in there 1 day a week.
Yep.
And that's a grant fund, is that, through the grant was through the schools?
Through
or-
DHHS.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't us.
Right. And that was, we're gonna have a full, with this
Full-time.
proposal, we'll have a full-time,
Right.
In the building, and we all.
in addition to that other
The grants are
grant,
anyway.
the grants going away?
Cut.
Okay, all right, that's good. All right, so motion made and seconded. Any other questions or discussion on this? All set? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And anything Well, I got one more other. Yep. So, it was requested out of policy committee to discuss, implementing drug testing. Did we discuss it here? So,
I watched the video of the policy, and I understand the debate back and forth. I think infrastructurally, there's a lot of unknowns for us to say anything about this yet. We'd have to do some more groundwork, maybe understand the how before the why. Not only is it an expense, but fundamentally, how do we do that the right way, right? Like, when you start doing those things, our HR department's accountable for tracking that information. There's a lot of hurdles. I don't think it's a bad idea. I think how it's implemented is far more important, and we're nowhere near that yet. So at this point, I don't think it has any merit in regards to need, because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought in the meeting there was a discussion that only one town in the state does it, and it's not a policy, it's a practice. I believe that's what they said.
my understanding was it was one other district that did it, and I don't know whether it's policy or practice. I thought it was.
Yeah, when I watched, I'm pretty sure she said it was a practice, not a policy, and I don't think it's something we need to, until we have an infrastructure built, we're just not there.
And I also, watched the video and thought about expense. I mean, every dollar that we have, not that we don't consider that an important issue, I certainly do, but, it's a juggling. And would it not have to be approved in the union, by the unions as part of collective bargaining? And we just ratified a 3-year teacher's contract, so, it's something, if it's something that we do want to do moving forward, we can plan for it and bring it up as one of our negotiation points.
No, I was the one that brought it up because I know that drugs are a major concern in our city and obviously across the United States. And I just want to make sure we're thinking about how the safety of these students, that we don't want them, like one board member said, it's going to deter people from applying. Well, those are the people that we don't want applying, to be honest. If they don't want to apply because they got to take a drug test, that's a good thing. We don't want them to apply. But I understand actually the cost as well, and we got to be careful about that stuff. I just want to make sure it's something that should be on our radar and something that we should definitely think about. And I know I spoke with the superintendent and how they go about if something comes about in the schools, how they handle it. And I just want to maybe down the road, we send our admin to some kind of education on how to detect that kind of stuff. Maybe that's something we could look in, because you gotta be trained, and you can't just look at someone and say, oh, there's many indicators, and I think maybe our admin could benefit from a class like that.
All right.
So we need to go non-public, correct?
Yeah, we have non-public? Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to go enter non-public under RSA 91A 2:2C.
So move.
Second.
Made the second.
Roll call.
All right. Enter back out of non-public. Mr. Lynch?
I'd like to make a motion to promote Christine Hebert from East Rochester School to interim assistant superintendent as presented by the superintendent.
I'll second.
Okay. So motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Lynch?
I'd like to make a motion to promote Andrea Lancy from elementary teacher to East Rochester interim principal as presented by the superintendent.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Entertain a
motion to adjourn?
So moved. Motion made, second, sorry. Second. Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.